Defense. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you had a good evening. We are still in the state's case in chief. The state has concluded its direct examination of Detective Riddle. You are now recognized, Mr. Whalen, for cross-examination.
Thank you. Good morning, Detective.
Whatever you want to call me. Call me by Tim.
I think you guys changed from inspector or from investigators to detectives at one point. Or one the other way.
Yes, sir. Good morning, by the way.
Good morning. You and I have different jobs in this system, right?
Correct, sir.
But some of it's similar. I have to talk to witnesses, interview witnesses, talk to the accused, right?
Yes, sir.
And similarly, when folks meet me for the first time, they don't know me. They don't know if they can trust me, right?
Correct.
And when they meet you, they don't know if they can trust you.
Absolutely.
I find that I have to work to gain that trust. Do you?
I think I would describe it as building rapport.
Okay. Now, in your testimony yesterday, you said that your unit handles rapes, robberies, murders, other violent crimes, or they did at the time, right?
At the time, yes, sir.
Now you're mostly homicide.
Yeah, or shootings.
Excuse me?
Shootings as well.
Shootings.
Yes,
okay. And when you met Ms. Howington at her home on the 14th of September 2019, you didn't know anything about her, did you?
No, sir. First encounter I've ever had with her.
And when you initially interviewed her there at the house, you did it with a digital recorder, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's what we heard yesterday.
Yes, sir.
And according to my count on that, at about 2 minutes and 40 seconds in, 2 minutes and 35 seconds, she says, I have PTSD, I have post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes, sir. I heard that yesterday as well.
Did you hear that on September 14th of 2019?
I don't recall. Just going back, I probably did, but I'm not real sure. I'm not sure if I recall that.
And then when you interviewed her there at the house, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was because you needed to interview her that she was not allowed to ride in the ambulance with her daughter to the hospital. Is that correct?
I'm not sure of protocol on that. The little baby had already been, or the 5-year-old had already been transported, and she was still on scene. I'm not real sure. We were dealing with a 2-year-old there as well, so I'm not sure the circumstances when the ambulance took off with the child. I'm sure they wanted to get medical attention to her.
Right. And a KPD officer, we've seen the video, transported her to the hospital.
Correct.
And you weren't at the hospital?
No, sir. I sent Brandon Wardlaw to the hospital.
Wardlaw was at the hospital. And you weren't in the room when the doctor came in to tell her that her daughter had died?
Absolutely not.
Detective Wardlaw was?
I would assume, yes, sir.
You and he didn't talk about that?
I don't recall. I know he was there, so I can only assume that he was probably present.
Well, you reached some conclusions fairly early on that you didn't think Ms. Howington in your interview at KPD after the hospital seemed appropriately distressed or emotional.
I think yesterday I told the jurors that I'm not sure how I know people react different, and I've done a lot of scenes, so I'm not sure what the appropriate way someone reacts. Everybody handles stress different.
Given that you had that concern, there were times when you and Wardlaw left the room during that interview, right? All the blank spaces that we cut out.
There were times we would come back and forth, yes, sir.
Did you ever ask him what she was like at the hospital? And
I don't recall, sir.
So it really wasn't that big a concern to you why she might be in the emotional state she was in?
We were investigating the death of her 5-year-old child.
I understand that. So at the time you were investigating that, you knew she had PTSD?
Based upon what she told me, yes.
Right. Well, yeah. At the end of that interview, you went through her purse and saw all the psych meds that were in there, and she said that was for PTSD, right?
That's what she conveyed to Detective Wardlaw.
And those were all prescription bottles?
Yes, sir.
With her name?
Yes, sir.
Her prescription?
Sure.
And in your developing of rapport with Ms. Howington, and you asked what was wrong, why she was wasn't really talking to you much, and she said, I'm a little nervous, I'm scared, I was raped by a police officer.
She did. She said that early on in the interview, and then she said it again. Yes.
Right. And what was your response?
I think we saw it yesterday, sir.
Well, let me ask you, do you, as a professional investigator, who also investigated at that time at least rapes, do you get training on how to deal with a rape victim?
Sir, what happened to her is tragic, and I do not condone that. But at that point in time, I thought she was deflecting, and I thought she was not being honest about the death of her 5-year-old child.
Detective, as a professional who deals with rape cases, do you get training on how to deal with rape cases?
I've dealt with several rapes over my career.
Do you get training on how to deal with rape victims?
Yes, sir.
Would you say that's what you did in response to her informing you she was nervous because she's in a little room with 2 male police officers and 18 months before she was raped by a male police officer?
I think at the point where I got a little out, well, let's just say frustrated. I was extremely frustrated. Yes, sir.
Oh, but that's not what you said.
Yes, sir.
No, you told Wardlaw says you say, I'm sorry. After you work through all that after a bit, you say, I came off a little like an asshole. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And Wardlaw says, we're dealing with a 5-year-old. We take this seriously.
Yes, sir.
And you said, no, I'm angry.
I was
He
angry.
says, no, we take this seriously. And you said, no, I'm angry.
I agree.
Who were you angry at?
I was angry with Miss Howington.
The grieving mother.
I would disagree with your explanation. I'm not sure how she was grieving, but do not cooperate with an investigation baffled me.
2 minutes and 40 seconds into your interview, 10 minutes and 30 seconds into your interview, you were so angry with her that you leaped from the chair and started screaming at her, come over the table, pointing your finger and saying, are you fucking kidding me? Your daughter's dead and that's what you're concerned about?
Yes, sir, I said that.
You're damn right you're going to jail tonight.
She was tampering with evidence.
Which you said, I don't care about tampering with evidence charges.
I don't. I want her to be truthful about the death of her child.
Because to you, truthful is important, right?
Truth is important.
And you accused her of being untruthful.
Very untruthful.
And she told you, let's be clear, you eventually find out from her that she tells the story about the unidentified black male because she doesn't want Gavin to live with the fact that he killed his sister.
Objection, Your
She
Honor.
told-
That's not what she said.
I'm asking you the witness.
He can answer if that's what she said. That's what she said.
I think later on in the interview, yes, sir.
Yes. You know that within about 10 minutes or so, let's see where that. Seven. The text messages which were sent. This is to Joey, right?
From the back of the police car?
Right.
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah, she says, go to my house the back way and get my gun out of the bush under the air conditioner. Gavin shot Destiny, then come to UT. I got you.
I did not get this until probably 3 or 4 or 5 days after the fact, after we rebuilt her phone.
She's telling within, let's see what that is. Well, this is problematic. The only time on these texts is at the top, and it's the same on all of them.
Should have been
right?
swapped over so you can get that. I'm not
So
sure.
we don't know exactly what that time frame is.
I can only assume that was while she was en route to the hospital.
So pretty much immediately she's telling her friend, Gavin killed Destiny. I'm on the way to UT.
That's what she's telling him, yes, sir.
She told you she put the story about the unidentified black man in order to protect her son.
Eventually, later on in the interview, she said that.
What's frustrating you and making you angry is you believe she's wasting your time in this investigation.
It is through my experience, people do not want to tell on people. That's what I deal with. We deal with family members all the time, Mr. Whalen, and I think through your experience, no one wants to tell on someone. I just thought there was more to the story than what she was giving. People do not walk into a home and just randomly shoot 5-year-old children.
Now, let's talk about what you know now. Because now you know that 18 months before the shooting, she was raped by a police officer.
That's terrible.
It is. Let me ask you. Have you reviewed the TBI investigation?
TBI investigations are closed, and I think the DA's office may have reviewed that. I'm not sure.
Did you ask to review it?
No, sir.
Didn't matter. You did.
No, it did matter. I did call, and we inquired about that. Yes, sir.
You called and inquired about it?
I had a supervisor call and inquire.
When did that supervisor call and inquire about it?
Maybe a month or so ago.
And that supervisor inquired about it but didn't share it with you, the
Yeah.
file?
Sir, those files are not open to us. The file would be open to the DA's office, and if they've got a copy of it, it was probably from the head DA here in Knox County, Sharm Allen.
Well, I'm going to ask you to look at this, a piece of video. Judge, could you put that on my table, please? That we saw yesterday.
So what you're telling us is you don't care.
It's not
You
that
don't care.
I got raped by a police officer, so please.
Are you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? Your daughter is dead?
I know that.
And you don't want to tell us who killed your child?
I don't know.
Lord have mercy. Do you have a heart? Do you have a soul?
I'm more worried about being charged for throwing that phone in the toilet.
You're fucking right. No, she will be charged. You're going to be charged with tampering. That's tampering with evidence. I'm serious to God. You're going to go to jail for that tonight. You can lawyer up, do what you want to. We want the truth from you. If you tell us the truth, then by George, I'll call the damn DA's office and tell them, hey, we'll slow a roll here. But if you're going to sit here and bullshit us on this, then we're not going to help you.
10 minutes and 30 seconds in, did that look to you like a man who cared about the fact that this woman had been raped by a police officer and had PTSD and was in distress? Did that look to you like you cared?
She was uncooperative pertaining to the death of her 5-year-old child. I just disagree with you, Mr. Whalen.
And whatever is in her going on in her mind is of no damn concern to you. That's what you're telling the jury?
What is of concern of me at that present time was the death of her 5-year-old child.
Do you think that was not uppermost in her mind on that at that moment?
I would hope so.
And do you think that to her, protecting...
Object to put myself in.
Sustained. Calls for speculation.
You believe the mental health of her child would be uppermost in her mind, right? He just testified.
They move along. He's already answered, but that's cause for speculation. Sustained.
And you tell her you don't care about tampering charges, right?
I want her to be truthful with me about what happened. At this point in time, we weren't aware that Gavin was the suspect in the crime.
You told her you don't care about tampering charges.
As well as I told her I didn't care about drugs as well.
You told her...
Yes, sir. I did tell her that.
And then you jump from your chair and say, you're going to jail tonight.
She's lying. She's lying, sir.
Well, does that sound like a man who doesn't care about tampering charges to you?
I'm trying to get her to cooperate with this investigation.
I believe someone in this interview used the term, once a fibber, always a fibber.
I believe later on, I saw it yesterday, you shaking your head. Yes, sir.
That was you, right?
I said that. Yes, sir.
So when you tell her, I don't care about tampering charges, and then burst out into your outrage about you're going to jail tonight for tampering, would she have any reason to believe that you're anything but a fibber?
I'm not sure what she believes. I can't speak for her.
You fibbed, right? I don't care. You're going to jail for it.
After about 10 or 12 lies, yes, she's committing crimes.
Yep, and she was interfering with your investigation because she wouldn't tell you that she picked up the casing, right? You kept saying, this doesn't make sense.
We couldn't find a casing.
You can't find a casing.
Sure.
That's because you're in a KPD interview room, not the scene, right?
I'm trying to gather facts to figure out who killed her 5-year-old child.
The first officer on the scene, Officer Cummings, tells us that after they, I think, got Gaffney taken care of, they went down the side of that house and they found that gun.
I was in the interview room, I believe, when they found the gun.
You saw that? You saw the testimony, right?
Yes, sir.
You said they went down the side of the house, found the gun.
Yes, sir. They found video and found her walk to the side of the house. Yes, sir.
Pretty early on in the investigation.
I did not know this at this particular time of the interview.
I understand that. You're accusing her of lying to you about where the bullets are and where the casings are.
So we're trying to figure it out.
You're trying to figure it out by accusing her of having moved them or taken them.
I believe she took it downhill when she's trying to destroy evidence at UT Hospital and get unknown people to take her cell phone. That's suspicious to me. I think you would agree that's suspicious.
Well, except that you kept telling her you don't care about dope charges.
I don't. To this day, I don't.
And yet we got Mr. Key's text message about, can I get some pills?
I don't care. I don't care about that.
That message came off of her phone that you got, right?
Several days later, I was never aware of this message until that phone was examined, Mr. Whalen. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Had you waited and let this grieving mother deal with the fact that she was in the house when her daughter was shot, had you let her have a day or two to figure out what was going on, and you had the time to get a basic grasp of the investigation, would that have ended with a better interview?
I think we will agree to disagree. I thought the right course of action was to look into the death of this 5-year-old little girl to get suspect information and to wonder why in the heck someone is trying to destroy evidence. That was my thought process. That's where I'm going with this. I'm going to agree to disagree with you respectfully.
No matter how half-cocked your understanding of the investigation was at that moment.
Sir, we can agree to disagree.
Well, you didn't know. You told her that it's not possible for Gavin to have fired that gun.
I still, to this day, I'm not sure. I don't know. We've heard numerous stories. I don't know what happened.
You know there are studies that show that a child can fire a gun.
I'm not a firearms examiner,
Right.
so, I know it's a certain pound of trigger pull. He's got small hands.
If the TPI agent comes in here and testifies later that child could fire that gun, would you respectfully disagree with him too?
He's the professional, and I would agree with him.
You said he couldn't fire the shot because he would have had to been over her on that couch firing the shot.
Yeah.
What position do you believe she was lying in when that shot was fired?
Sir, and with all due respect, I never went to the hospital. I just went by. I know where she was shot. The couch looked tall. We're doing an interview right here. Let's backtrack here. I don't know what angle, and you'll have a medical examiner to tell you all that. I don't know.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'm asking you,
Yes.
in your interview, you're telling her he had to climb up on top and shoot her like that.
I thought it was, I felt really weird about blaming this on a 2-year-old child.
There was a pillow behind her on that couch. She was lying on her side, and the bullet is in the pillow behind her on the couch, right?
Well, technically, she had been moved, so we couldn't fully reenact where she was on that couch, but the bullet was in a pillow. You are correct.
There was a whole line of pillows along the back of that couch.
Correct.
Now, not being a gun expert or a medical examiner, but an investigator of homicides, if the bullet is in the pillow lined up on the back of the couch and not in the cushion of the seat of the couch, which position do you believe she would have been in when that shot was fired? It doesn't call for speculation. He's an investigator, for God's sakes.
If you know, answer the question.
At the time that I was conducting this interview, no projectiles had been discovered in that pillow. So at this particular time, I do not know.
I'm asking you now.
And I'm explaining to you, I do not know at this particular time.
I'm asking you right now, with the knowledge you have right now,
To this day and time, yes, sir, I will agree with you.
that she was lying on her side and the bullet goes
Yes,
through her
sir.
into the
There
back.
is a medical examiner report that will report that.
Now, do you think it's possible that Miss Howington knew what position her child's body was in?
I would think she would. Well, based upon the many different versions we received, I don't know.
And so you, in this half-cocked rush to an interview, put the child lying on her back on the couch and telling the woman who knows a fact that he would have been over her shooting like this, right? That's what we end up with.
Correct.
So, the woman who knows a fact is being told by the professional investigator, that's not true. Right?
Correct.
That's what you might call a fib.
Yes, sir. I don't think we need to argue that point.
You said fibbers are fibbers, just like the police officers. If I fib, I'm not allowed to testify.
Sir, I didn't have an accurate fact.
People might call that a fib.
I don't necessarily know at that particular time it was a fib, but we can move on. I will agree with you.
And the other fibs that she was telling you were that this man shot from the door all the way back to that couch in the second living room. Right? That was the original story.
No. That's a mischaracterization. She says, you want to go from the 911 and what she told me initially? Is that what we're talking about? I took it to understand the guy walked into the middle room and shot the little girl at point blank range, and his eyes got big, and I guess he dropped the gun or ran out. I don't know, because we don't know that version, but I never once said the suspect shot from the front door, or she never told me the suspect shot from the front door.
And if you take for just a moment the possibility that a grieving mother tells a story to protect her 2.5-year-old, then you would agree with me that whatever she tells you after that story really doesn't matter, because she's telling the story to protect her child.
If you want what?
I object to that question.
If the individual that you are interviewing knows the facts and believes they have a good reason for having told you a lie about what happened, the rest of the things they say don't really matter because they know what happened. And that they have already decided they're going to tell you this story for what they believe to be a good reason. So if she tells you it was she didn't see a casing there, she didn't see a casing there. But if she had, it wouldn't have mattered, because she's already told you this story.
Is there a question put to this?
Yes. So if she said
Ask a question, don't give a speech.
why were you accusing her of having moved the casing?
Because we couldn't find a casing, sir. I mean, it could have been a investigator wore-all wheel gun, but we couldn't find a casing. So I just wanted to know where it was. I don't know that. Did I accuse her of that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, several times.
Okay.
This doesn't add up. There should be a casing there. You're not finding
Sure.
a casing.
I'm in the middle of an investigation interrogating a person who's lying to me.
What did you say yesterday about casings?
When I pulled it out of my magazine,
No. What did you say yesterday about casings? They can
go anywhere.
Those
Absolutely.
little buggers can get all over.
yes, sir. I agree with you 100%.
So knowing that, and knowing you haven't really investigated the scene yet, why are you accusing her of moving something that you know on its own may have gone anywhere?
At what point did I accuse her in this interview? Just
Tell her over and over
you
again.
can just let me know, so I want to be accurate. I don't want you to misrepresent my words.
You don't recall her saying this doesn't
Of course I
line
do,
up.
but I want to know what point in the investigation did I say this.
I'm asking you. Did you say this isn't
Yes.
lining up? We should be finding
We
shell
should.
casing.
Yes, sir. So at some
Did
point,
you move
at
the
some
shell
point,
casing?
if I said that shell casing, we're looking for the shell casing at some point in this interrogation, yes, I did say that. I did say the little things bounce around. I did say that.
Well, you didn't tell her that.
I'll agree with you, Mr. Whalen.
You
I'll agree
didn't-
with you 100%.
You didn't tell her they bounce around and move all over the place.
No, sir.
No, you told the jury that.
Sure.
I'm asking you, why didn't you give her the benefit of that doubt in that interview, since you hadn't been investigating the scene yet?
We are investigating the death of a five-year-old little girl, and we're trying to get suspect information gathered, and I'm trying to figure out why in the world she's lying.
When you were watching that video, the porch video from next door, you kept talking about the car pulled into the driveway, right? The first car pulled into the driveway and sitting there.
Yes, sir.
And you tell her you haven't seen it because you pulled into the same driveway.
This was that on the 17th, September the 17th, the second interview?
Yeah.
Sure.
And you've been to that house, right?
You talking about to
Her house.
Yes, sir.
502
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Her house then, it's an empty lot now.
I think it's an empty lot, yeah.
Right. You know there's not a driveway in the house.
No, it's a street parking lot. Sure.
So when you were saying this car pulled into the driveway so you had to see it.
Absolutely.
It was a
She
car,
walked right by it.
It was a
She
car.
parked right behind it.
It wasn't a car in her driveway, it was a car parked on the street. Were there cars parked on the street that night? Other cars parked on the street that night?
You all got the video. You can make your own assumption.
Well, how about you answer my question? Were there other vehicles parked on the street that night?
Sure. And she parked right behind the car, and then she motions for the young man, whoever's in that car, to come inside the home.
The point is,
Yes, sir.
you say they were pulled into a driveway so she couldn't have missed a car. It wasn't a driveway.
Okay.
Lots of cars parked on the street, right?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
And during your interview with Ms. Howington, she told you about the incident days before this. She said initially in the interview on Thursday that Mr. Oliver came to the house and was outraged, banging on the door like he was the police. He was upset because her new boyfriend was at the house. They had a confrontation out front, right?
I do recall her mentioning the confrontation with Antoine, but I got a little bit more information after I interviewed Callie.
Right. You interviewed Callie and you interviewed Mr. Oliver.
Oh, absolutely.
And they both told you about that incident on Thursday.
I know Daniel Hensley, who's Callie, told me about that incident, and I don't recall I'm not real sure about Antoine, but if it's on video, he said that. Sure.
He tells you he took a clip out. He thinks he took the gun away from her. He takes
I do
the clip
recall
out
that.
and
Yes,
he
sir.
throws it.
Yes, sir.
And he thinks Callie goes over and picks it up.
Yes, sir.
So you got all that verified, right?
I think on the 16th of September. Yes, sir.
Right. So if that happens the way she described it, the way Antoine described it, and the way Callie described it, Callie is the one who takes the gun on Thursday that Antoine is taking apart, puts it back together, and goes in the house.
I don't know. I would have to assume.
That's what the interview said. But
I'm not sure who took that gun back in the house.
she brought it out because he refused to leave.
Objection to hearsay.
She told him, Judge, this story.
Okay, you're asking don't talk over me. You're asking what Callie said and what Antoine Oliver said. That is hearsay, sustained.
She told you he wouldn't leave. He was outraged and he wouldn't leave.
On the 12th?
On the 12th, yes.
Yeah, I think she said something when he wouldn't leave me about hit her with a car. Sure.
And when she comes out with a gun and he takes it away from her and breaks it down.
They have a very volatile relationship.
Right. And so, when you asked her in the interview on the 14th, where was that gun? What did she tell you?
In the closet, I think. Yeah.
On a shelf in a black bag on the closet.
I took it on the 14th that gun was in the top shelf of that closet, upward, very high, and that's why we took measurements.
You went and took a picture in the black bag and there's a strap hanging down.
The black bag comes into play here at some point. I never saw the black bag being moved, but other people said the black bag was moved. I'm not sure.
So what she was telling you is where she kept her gun.
I think you'll see in the reenactment, she tells me that gun is in the top of that closet. I don't recall her ever telling me it was in that bag.
If I ask you, where do you keep your gun in the house?
Yes, sir. I've got a few guns in the house.
You can tell me where you keep your gun.
I can tell you where most of my guns are. Yes, I should know where my guns are.
You said most of them. You can't tell me where all of them
I'll tell you where every one of them are. Is that relevant to this?
Yes.
Okay.
You could tell me where you keep, let's just say you only have one gun.
Okay.
Just for the conversation. You could tell me where you keep your gun.
Sure.
If your wife moved that gun the day before, that gun wouldn't be where you said you kept it.
I know my wife, she don't like guns, so she wouldn't move it.
Again, for the purpose of the conversation, if she moved your gun, you would still, if you said you kept
So
it,
hypothetically is what we're saying.
right,
Sure.
you keep it on the top shelf of the closet.
Sure.
If she moves it to somewhere else because she's doing something on the top shelf of the closet, and you tell me it's on the top shelf of the closet, you're not lying.
Sustained.
I can't ask the investigator hypothetical.
No, sustained.
At any time, I'm not allowed to
I
ask
didn't say that, Mr. Whalen. Don't argue with me. I sustained the objection to that
Can you give
question.
me the basis on that so I've got a record as to
You're
why?
calling for speculation which is not relevant. Move along.
If somebody moved Miss Howington's gun from the place she kept it, and she tells you the place she kept it, she wouldn't be lying, would she? She didn't know it got moved.
She also said Callie threw it in the bush.
She did. She told you that. And you didn't say that gun was hidden in the bush, did you?
No, I would say the gun was thrown out.
It's pretty doggone clear where that gun is, right?
It's dark on the side of the house. She tried to hide that gun
We found it.
while her daughter's inside being shot.
Well, not while her daughter's inside being shot. She's actually on the phone. At the
She's
same
already
time.
wounded. She's already wounded.
The same time she's on with the 911
Her daughter is inside, left unattended, while she's suffering from a gunshot wound to her chest.
Right. And the 2-year-old's in there too.
I agree with you.
So how many other shots do you want that gun to? How many times do you want that gun to be fired? She don't get it out of the way.
She could take that gun and put it anywhere out of reach, and then tell us where the gun was when we come in.
And that would be a rational decision, wouldn't it?
There could have been a lot of rational decisions made in
And
this.
she was suffering at that time from post-traumatic stress disorder before the gun was fired.
I don't know the side effects of PTSD. I've worked police work for 20 years, sir. I've seen a lot of gruesome crime scenes. I may have PTSD, never been diagnosed. But I'm pretty confident one of the side effects of PTSD is not to be a liar.
If I tell you that one of the signs would be to have brain fog, confusion,
Lying?
memory loss.
Lying?
He's not a medical
He
professional.
raised it, Judge.
He is not a medical professional. I sustained the objection.
Can we strike all his testimony then about whether or not lying is a
The jury will listen to those opinions which are qualified, and the court tells you can't accept as that of an expert. These are not those such opinions. Move along.
May we approach, Judge?
Yes.
You've talked about how this couch looked high to you. Right?
Yes, sir.
You do recall saying in that interview, we're going to go out there and get your couch, and I just want you to know we're going to go get your couch.
Correct.
Let me show you what's been introduced as exhibit number 12. After you recognize that.
Yes.
What is that?
That's the actual sofa she was lying on.
Okay. So this is the couch that you're talking about, that Destiny was lying on that night when she was shot.
Correct.
And you believe that couch looks high, tall, seat part of it.
Sure.
And in that video of the walkthrough, you and Wardlaw are standing beside it. It comes up out to your knees. That sounds like a high couch to you.
Okay, I'll agree with you. It's an average couch. It's a normal couch.
So why was it necessary to talk about how high the couch was?
Sir, it's a normal couch.
Right. Talking about how high it was made the story sound less likely that Gavin could have shot her.
You know what? Again, How many versions did she give us?
I'm not asking you about how many versions she gave you. I'm asking you about the versions you gave.
I did not believe her son was capable of shooting his sister. How in the world can a 2-year-old child know where a gun is, go get a gun, drag a stool? This is all my thought process. So
You're telling me that as a homicide investigator, you are not aware of the multiple times a year that small children get guns and shoot people with them.
It's happened, absolutely.
So
It's happened.
Why are you acting so shocked that a 2-year-old could get a gun and shoot someone? It's just not believable.
Sir, you've seen the interview. I'm not going to tell you to put you do this for a living, I do it for a living. You're a criminal defense attorney. I disagree with you. She was lying and being dishonest. I'm trying to understand and comprehend this mess.
So you thought that you would get more truth from her if you lied and were dishonest?
Sir, I don't know that I lied to her. I disagree with you. That's misrepresentation of my words.
You told her the couch was too high for him to be able to do
Okay, I did say that.
And now, you did, and now you say
I'm just-
it didn't happen. It's a normal couch.
For conversation, I'm going to agree with you because it's going to be an argument. It's
no,
a normal
you don't
couch.
agree with me because you don't want
It's
to argue.
a normal couch,
Is
sir.
this a normal couch
It's
or
a
not?
normal couch.
And
Yes,
so
sir.
when you said it was
Yes,
too
sir.
high for this
I
to
agree with
happen
you.
cabin, you were lying.
I agree, sir. I did not have any intent to lie to this young lady. I'm not trying to put anything in her head besides get the truth.
How do you have to put things in people's head to get them to tell the truth?
Sir, we're investigating the death of her 5-year-old little girl.
I know, and you know that no matter how many times you say that, it doesn't change anything, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't change things in your mind.
No, it doesn't. We're talking about what was said, why, and how.
Sure.
And we're talking about who was the fibber in this interview. And I'm telling you, you didn't come off too good on the fibber scale either, did you?
Sir, are you calling me a liar?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I disagree with you.
When you're talking to a individual, I know you hadn't had any training about how to deal with people with PTSD or stress. In that interview, you all asked her about what kind of gun it was, right?
Correct.
Was it one like we carry, or was it one of those with a round thing on it?
I think Investigator Warlaw said wheel gun.
And then said, you know, like in the movies, the ones they use for Russian roulette. Remember that?
If that's what he said, is that what he said or
You
me?
know we played the video?
If that's what I said, then I agree with you. Sir, if that's what I said, then
Oh, no,
I
I
agree.
don't want you just to agree with me for the sake of agreeing with me. Let's,
I'm confused about what your question actually is.
well, we'll get to it. We'll clear it up for you.
Just refer him back to the interview.
He don't drive a black. He drives a white.
Let me ask you while we're here.
I don't know. He goes to the PAL auction.
She has told you that she's nervous being in that room because she was raped by a police officer, right?
Yes, sir.
You and Wardlaw both heard that,
Yes, sir.
right? And so that's when you start out with yelling and screaming at her, and then a little while later you kind of work through the process, and we arrive at this moment on the video in the interview where you're talking about this 300 and what color it is.
On
and
the
you
Walmart
guys-
Clinton Highway, everybody's cars.
We're pretty certain it's white.
But you know what was in there.
And he had a hat on. Do you
I don't know.
Because we've got witness.
What was he wearing?
He had on a black shirt. And he had a black hat on.
Did he say anything to you? Did you ever see him when you first got home?
So
You think he might have been? You think he really was following you in?
I think that he was just watching.
I think you're right. I think the video is going to tell us that he was probably.
Now, we're all friends again because she's agreed with you that it's probably Antoine, right?
And are you asking me how we got to the point this may be domestic related? Is that what you're asking
Yeah,
me?
we'll get to that. But at this point in the interview, you're no longer yelling and screaming at her because she's agreed with you guys that Antoine
Setting.
did.
At this point, I don't know what to believe.
Okay.
For you to come home. We knew this is domestic. And we figured the whole time that you're scared. We understand it. We just don't want you to lie to us. You know what's more than this? You're okay. You're okay.
You lost the baby. Come here. Come on.
Now, given that she has told you she's uncomfortable because there are 2 male police officers in the room and she was raped by a male police officer 18 months before, did you think this was an appropriate act?
I can't speak for
I'm not asking
investigators.
you to speak for him. Is that an appropriate act?
That's a consoling act to me.
Consoling act.
We were concerned about the 5-year-old little girl. This is tragic any way you look at it, sir.
I'm talking about the young woman who was in your room.
She looks like she's pretty receptive of it. She didn't back away.
How many guns was she wearing? How many guns was she wearing?
There are 2 guns in that room, and we never threatened her with a gun.
No, but you're 2 male officers in the room, and she's just explaining she was raped by a cop, and that makes her scared. So one of them decides plugging her might be a good idea, right?
If that's what he did.
And if that's what he did,
Yeah.
what the heck would you call that?
Sir, he hugged her. I will agree with you.
Now, and then at the end of this interview, you go through her purse, right?
And Wardlaw goes through the person. I'm standing by. Yes, sir.
She's got a bunch of pill bottles in there.
People have pill bottles all the time.
Well, for her prescription, right?
Sir, if you're asking me, did I know she was diagnosed with
No,
PTSD?
no, I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you went through her purse, right?
Yes, sir.
She had lots of pill bottles.
Sure.
One of them, you ask her what you ask what it's for. She says, "I have shingles."
Is that what Wardlaw asked her, or did I ask her
I
that?
think Wardlaw asked her
Okay.
while you're standing there,
Okay, if that's what he asked, sure.
and you said what?
Well,
You got shingles and you let him hug on you?
okay,
He's got
I
a
did say
young
that.
child.
Yes, he does have young children.
Who hugged on who?
He,
Why are you giving her a hard time about having shingles when Wardlaw takes a rape victim and decides to hug her in an emotional moment in an interview?
Investigator Wardlaw hugged her, so we will agree with that.
And you jumped on her for allowing him to do that when she had shingles.
I think it
Building
was.
rapport again?
Did I jump on her? Can we watch it? Am I laughing? I don't understand what you're. I don't think
I don't
jumped on her.
understand either, officer. That's the one point we
I
do
think we're getting some
agree on.
mischaracterizations here. I think I laughed about it and said, "Why would you let him hug or her hug on each other?" However, I described it.
That's what happened.
So your little boy can't speak very well. Right now. So he talks pretty well. So he understands everything.
Shingles contagious.
You're not supposed to give it to you're 6 years old. Wait until babies.
That's what this is. Human service.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I wait for my people.
Okay. Trap though.
And I'm the president. The music phone.
You what?
The music phone.
I don't see that in here.
I just want to take it off.
What's it called?
Music phone.
So your little boy can't speak very well. Right now. So he talks pretty well.
Yes.
So he understands everything.
Shingles contagious.
Yeah.
Shingles.
Damn. And he's got a small child.
Back home because we really like to talk to him.
I don't think he knows.
So what's this one? Clover, what's that?
I have shingles and stress.
Well, that was no good. You got all kinds of contagious, are you? You just now, you let me hug on you, tell me you got shingles.
Damn. And he's got a small child.
This is wrong.
Well,
What's this? Fluoxetine or whatever.
So that was just a joke to you?
I think I was laughing, to be honest with you.
I think you were laughing too.
Sure.
I think you weren't taking her feelings into consideration, were you?
I was.
I'm
Sir,
sorry, that's an inappropriate question because you're not rolling your eyes and I don't want the jury to be wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen, we need to take matter up. Your absence. Step out, please. All rise. For the defense.
Wait a call.
All right, Mr. Whalen, you're recognized for further cross-examination.
I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before, but there is a KPD general order about officer-involved shootings. If that officer has time before he talks to an interviewer, can review video and reports.
I think you're talking about the force science or what they believe in force science, that you need 48 to 72 hours to completely recollect what happened.
Okay. So trained professionals need 48 to 72 hours to completely recollect what they recall, what took place, right?
Yes.
And when you become a police officer, you get some psychological testing, right?
Sure.
So If you had really bad PTSD, you probably wouldn't get to be a police officer.
I don't know what the process is. We have a lot of military personnel working at the police department. I'm sure they suffer from some sort of that.
So, when they send you to the academy, they give you training on how to be a police officer, right?
Yes, sir.
And how you put important things into reports.
Yes, sir.
You don't leave important things out of reports.
Yes, sir.
And they teach you about the importance of getting all the information right.
Yes, sir.
Because police work is a whole lot about filling out reports early on, right? Especially.
It's a lot of paperwork. Yes, sir.
You got to get that right.
Yes, sir.
And yet, if a police officer were involved in a shooting, they might get 48 to 72 hours.
You know, that policies went back and forth. TBI investigates, and I don't know what TBI's policy is. TBI investigates all that now.
I'm asking about a general order of the KPD.
Do you have that general order? I can read it.
You're aware of the fact that the policy...
I'm not sure that there's a general order. If you can provide that to me, I will agree with you. Do you know where that is in the KPD Standard of Operating Procedure?
602, I think.
I need to read 602. I'm not familiar with 602.
I don't think that this is very relevant.
When I asked you...
Hold on, let me, what's the objection? Well, I mean, do you know or not?
I don't know what 602 is. But here's what I do know, if you want.
Let him ask the question.
Forsyths, and I got this when I went to Forsyths, they suggest when an officer-involved shooting takes place, 48 to 72 hours. Do they always go by that? I don't know that. I don't know if that's always been a policy.
You remember the Boston East shooting not too long ago, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. TBI ran that investigation.
And those officers were allowed to review all their body cams and reports before they talked to them.
I was not a part of that investigation, so I don't want to speak to that.
Would that surprise you if I said that's what it was? That they got to review their body cams and
TBI was in charge of that investigation, and I was not a part of that.
So, she didn't have 48 or 72 hours.
No, sir. And that's on me. That's on me.
She didn't have 45 minutes.
It's on me, sir.
She didn't have 45 minutes.
Have you ever heard the first 48 were the most crucial part of the homicide investigation? I mean, you can laugh at that. That's the truth.
She didn't get 45 minutes from the time the doctor told her your daughter's dead.
Insane.
She was sitting in your interview room on the third floor of KBD. Right?
This is sad.
How do you get to the third floor of that old KBD building? How do you get there?
She's taken to police headquarters, what I requested, because we have some serious questions.
Now, let's answer the other question. How do you get to the third floor of the KBD?
I'll explain to them. I requested her to come to the third floor. She's taken in the back of a police car, sir.
Well, they didn't take her in the back of a police car to the third floor, did they? They don't drive up to that interview room.
Well,
she had to get into a locker.
Figure of speech.
I
Okay.
asked you a specific question.
Specific question.
This is
She
like
was
that training that you had about how it's important to get the information in.
She was driven from UT Hospital in a patrol car. They take her to the back of police headquarters. They open the car door. They walk her to the elevator. They walk her up to the third floor, and she's placed into an interview. Is that what you wanted me to answer, sir?
And she doesn't get out of there without your permission, right?
She's in the middle of this homicide investigation, sure.
She doesn't get out of there without your permission.
And she's been read her Miranda, so.
She was ready. Right?
Yes, sir.
And that included the right not to talk. She didn't want
Absolutely. If she would have said, I need a lawyer, we're done.
When she was asked about the phone, and she said, I'm scared, I don't want to talk anymore.
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
That's not, to me, that's not asking for her lawyer.
That's not the magic word. She does that. You said, if you decide to speak with us, you may stop at any time.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what the
And
right
request a
says.
lawyer. Yes, sir. It says request a lawyer.
It also says you may stop at any time. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. She said, I want to stop.
She said she wanted to stop.
Did you stop?
No.
So there's a fit for you. You can stop at any time unless you want to, and then I'm going to say no and keep questioning you.
We are going to continue to question her until she requests a lawyer. Then we are done. At that point, she has not requested a lawyer. Sir, I know what the Miranda right is. We can read it to him.
Did I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. Is it further on back? It may be further on back.
Yes, sir. Consent to it.
It's not.
It's not.
I don't know.
No, there was a consent for the formal consent to search the house. But you read her that, right?
Yes, sir.
And it does say if you decide to speak with us, you may stop at any time.
I agree with exactly what you said.
Now, at one point, and it's the results of such are not admissible, you offered to let her, you said, well, why don't you take a lie detector test? Right?
Did I say that a word long? Okay, sure.
And do you remember what her response was?
Sure.
What'd she say?
I'm trying to get a reaction out of her. She said, sure.
She said, yes, I'll do it.
Sure.
After that, when you kept questioning her, she said, why don't you give me the lie detector test? She asked you about 3 or 4 times, didn't she? And in the end, you say, nah, we're not going to do that.
We're not. That's on me.
So would you like to call that a fib or a lie?
I think it's if I want to administer that. I asked her a question, then I said, no, we're not going to do that. Did I?
What do you consider a lie detector test? And what you're doing, I understand, this is a technique. This is how you get people to say things you want them to say. Right?
You're a well-versed lawyer, yes, sir.
So the lie detector is a tool, right?
It's an investigative tool. It's not admissible in court.
But it's a great tool to say, well, if you didn't do it, take a lie detector test. And it kind of screws up the plan when they say, okay. And you say, well, this doesn't seem right either. Well, why don't you give me the lie detector test?
I agree with you.
And this doesn't make sense either.
I agree with you.
She said, why don't you give me a lie detector test?
I agree with you, sir.
And then you just say, nah, we're not going to do that.
I agree with everything you just said.
Those were lies. You can call them investigative techniques. You weren't going to give her a lie detector test, were you?
If you're calling me a liar, I disagree with you.
Were you going to give her a lie detector test?
We did not have a polygrapher there at nighttime, so
You
no.
would have given her one the next day, couldn't you?
I'm not going to do that.
Then why offer it? Why bait her?
You told the jurors it's an interview technique.
And it's also a lie if you have no intention to do it.
I disagree with your characterization of
I
that.
understand you do. In her interviews, you have said that she changed her story many times.
I believe so.
In the interview, from beginning to end, who was the first person that brought up Antoine Oliver as a possible suspect?
Brandon Wardlaw.
Not her.
No.
And y'all talked about that, her history with her, and so, come on, man, it looks like it could have been him. And then Wardlaw says something about, I'm just going to shoot straight with him. I think he did. And you said, I think so too. He hit the nail on the head, didn't he?
Hammer and nail.
Hammer and nail.
Yes, sir.
She hit the nail on the head. It's Antoine. Right?
That was the figure of speech I used.
And then after a while, what did she say to you? And then you asked, is it possible? Do you think Antoine could have done this in his car? Do you remember what she said?
No.
She said no.
Mm-hmm.
No, I can guarantee you he didn't do it. Right? I promise you.
Sure.
You didn't do it.
At that time, she was still on an unknown black man.
Oh, well, y'all had just thrown Antoine under the bus and said, it's Antoine. We think it's Antoine. You said, yeah, I knew all along this was domestic. That makes sense, and you're scared of him, so you wouldn't tell us that. You changed the story to Antoine. She then, after about 10 or 15 minutes of Antoine did it, she says, you're right. You're right. You're right. I can't do this anymore. That's what she said.
Do you want me to explain to the jurors how we got to Antoine and why we thought Antoine could possibly be involved? There's 8 reports listed in the database involving her and Antoine. Very volatile relationship. She very well could be a battered woman. I don't know. But the reports are ugly. But not only in some of the reports she's a victim, but in some she's listed as a suspect. So that's where we are. We are trying to come to some reasoning why someone would come into the home and kill this 5-year-old little girl. We didn't believe it was an unknown black male. There has to be motive, Mr. Whalen. That's where we were going. Could a domestic be a motive? Yes, absolutely. We're not going to force her to lie about that.
Let me ask you this. You said that in the interview too. There has to be a motive.
Yes, sir.
We'll try it. If I'm driving my car home tonight, somebody turns quick in front of me and hits me. Is there a motive for them hitting me?
No, it's an accident.
It's an accident.
Mm-hmm.
So you do recognize that accidents can happen.
I would agree with you, sir.
And so there doesn't have to be a motive for an accident, does there?
There has to be a motive with the information we were just given that a black male, an unknown black male, walked into the house and shot a 5-year-old child. That's where we are in this investigation. We're not to Gavin yet. We're still trying to develop a suspect.
And once she had told you about the September 12th incident with Antoine.
Yes, sir.
And given the history you had already researched before this interview, you had to know that sounded about right.
There was no report made on September the 12th, to my knowledge.
The actions sounded about right.
Oh, hey, Antoine, he's not a good person.
And then you went and confirmed that. You corroborated that, speaking with Antoine and with Callie.
Sure.
And so at some point when she talks about how, in saying that Antoine was the one that did it and Antoine was in the room, and she's talking about how he shows up and he's acting an ass and he's screaming and angry because Callie's around. She's telling you the same story she told you about Thursday, right? She's just melding it in.
I don't know what she's telling me.
Well, you know the words she's telling you. She told you those same words about Thursday. Then she actually told you it was on Friday.
She told Warlaw that, because Warlaw's getting into that a little bit more. Yes, and I'm listening.
You're sitting in the room.
Sure.
You weren't sleeping.
No, sir.
And then she tells you about that it was one time. She says that incident actually happened on Friday.
I think so.
And then during the interview, she said, "What day is this?" Remember,
Yeah.
you tell her it's Saturday.
Saturday the 14th, and actually the incident occurred on the 12th.
Right.
September the 12th.
You think she was lying when she told you it was Friday, the 13th?
Well, no.
She was just confused.
Sure, absolutely. People get confused all the time.
Especially if they got PTSD and they got a shooting in their house and their daughter dies. That's
How do you get confused about your daughter dying? I don't know that.
You kept saying, "Your daughter's dead." She said, "I know." She wasn't confused at all about that, was she?
Sir, we will agree to disagree. I would never, speaking for myself, would never be confused about the death of my child.
I hope you never find out.
I hope I don't.
But right now, you can't tell us from your personal.
Oh, I can tell you I would be honest about it.
You can tell me you think you would be if you could remember. If you had the facts straight. If it was within 48 or 72 hours.
Yes, sir.
You have to meld them together and figure out what
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk for just a minute about that second interview on September 17th. Were you the one that set that up?
I believe the totality of that was she was taken into custody after she got back from the funeral home.
Did you or Wardlaw call her and ask her where she was and found out she was
I don't know the details, but we let her do what she needed to do about the funeral home arrangements, and then we wanted to bring her back in. She had a warrant on file, and we wanted to continue this interview. Yes, sir.
So the second interview is now the woman who has PTSD, a gun fired in her home, a 5-year-old child was shot. She was taken away from the home and not allowed to go there with the ambulance to the hospital. She goes to the hospital. She's told her daughter's dead. She's then 45 minutes later taken for an interview. 3 days later, once you find out she's getting the funeral arrangements made, someone followed her from the funeral home to the Kroger, to the gas station, and to her house, and then you showed up with cops there to arrest her.
Was that 72 hours later? Because maybe her memory's a little bit better. I'm not sure.
It might have a chance, but you've already done the
I'm just saying, you said 70, that she needs a little bit of time.
I did say that. And I said, you followed her to her house and had a bunch of cops there.
There's cruiser video. We treated her with the utmost respect. I don't even think we handcuffed her when we put her in the back of the car.
Right after she got through making her funeral
Yes,
arrangements, you treated her
it's
with
tragic.
utmost respect.
It's so tragic.
I have a moment. Yes. Because I have no further questions as witness. Thank you.
Can you redirect?
Yes, sir.
All right, Investigator Riddle, Mr. Whalen was asking you about your initial interaction with the defendant in this case. And he was asking about her demeanor. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I think he was asking you some questions about what was it about her demeanor that made you think she was being deceptive. Do you recall him asking you that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you, we're going to start here. When you start that first interview with her, where she, the first interview that we watched on video, I'm not talking about the one at the scene, but the first one where she comes in and she sits and talks. At that point in time, setting her demeanor aside, okay? So put that completely aside. Was there anything else in your mind that had happened that caused you concern?
I already knew what happened at the hospital.
Okay. And so when you sat down and you talked to the defendant initially at the police station, you already knew about what had happened at the hospital. Is that correct?
Are you talking about where I come in? I came in, I explained the process because
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about once you talked to her the first time, the
Yes.
recorded interview that you
Yes.
did, where you sat her down and she's talking to you in the interview room, is there any, setting her demeanor aside, was there anything else that caused you concern about anything else that had happened?
The destroying of the phone.
Yes. And so that was one thing that had caused you concern, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you also recall that there was some concern you had about what she had said initially to you?
Yeah, there was some concern about suspect.
And so specifically, whenever you talked to her at the initial scene, and she was talking about a black person that did it, and then she was talking about seeing that person from inside the house, I believe she also described the type of vehicle that that person was driving. Tell the jury about what you were thinking when she was telling you that.
Well, when she told me that again, I go back into the simple fact that she's in that middle room in the long distance. How were you able to observe that vehicle at that distance and know it's a Chrysler 300? That's a specific car, a black car, in the middle of the night. I just thought that was a little weird initially right off the bat.
Okay, so even setting aside how she was acting, the fact that she had described this black Charger from a vantage point where you didn't think she could have been able to see it, and the fact that she had attempted to destroy her phone, that she had put it in water and tried to give it to somebody else, those were two other things that gave you pause. Is that correct?
And this is all before the actual video.
Okay. The defense attorney was asking you about the text messages in this case. And so I just want to kind of give a timeline of where that information came to you, okay? So can you walk the jury kind of through the evolution of when you became aware of the text messages and when you became aware of the casings and things of that nature?
Well, the text messages were actually several days later. You go back into the phone was turned off. We couldn't get it turned on. It had water on it, and I think it had been bent or broke to a certain extent. So what we did is we had a phone forensic examiner to rebuild that phone so we could do an extraction, a data extraction, and get those text messages. So any text messages taken from that phone would have been days after this event. Now, what was your other question?
The casings, as far as what was going on with the casings.
The casing, I was curious about the casing because I know from my experience, and these things do bounce around, just like Mr. Whalen said, they do bounce around. We couldn't find it initially. I didn't want to disturb anything, but from where that shooting was, they generally spit out to the right. Not all guns, but most guns I've been around. And I just didn't see it lying around on the floor.
Okay, and so you asked Ms. Howington about the casings several times, is that correct?
Sure.
Okay, now let me ask you this. You asked Ms. Howington about the casings, and she never wavered or changed her story at all about what happened with the casings, is that correct?
No.
Now, setting that aside, did she waver or change her stories about other things that happened at the scene?
Numerous.
The fact that she was lying about other things and changing her story about other things, was that part of the reason why you were asking her about the casings?
Yes.
As far as the video with the porch, or the video that you can see of the porch,
Yes, ma'am.
in that video, you can see the individual come and park the car. Is that correct?
You talking about the first individual?
Yes.
Yeah. You can clearly see the lights to that car turn off an adjacent street into that roadway driveway is what we would say it is.
Okay. And did that car park directly in front of her house?
It appeared to me it did.
Okay. And it's parallel parked right in front of that house. Is that
Yes.
correct? And those lights stayed on.
They did.
Okay. And so whenever you told Ms. Howington that she had to have seen that car, did you take into the account that it was parked right in front of her house and that the lights were on?
Yes.
Was there anything else you took into account?
Well, it looked like she beckoned someone to come in from the car at one point in the video.
All right, I want to talk about this incident that happened on September 12th, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So Ms. Howington talked to you briefly about something that happened on September 12th, is that correct?
She did.
Okay. Her version of what happened on September 12th, that changed throughout the interview, correct?
I don't recall a lot of the facts. I think her facts were very limited on what happened on the 12th, and I gained other facts when I interviewed Daniel Hensley.
Okay, so she started out the story about September 12th, and she said that Callie brought a gun out, and then later she tells you she's the one that pulled the gun on September 12th. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
So that's a change about how the
Yes.
gun got there and who did what.
Yes.
And so her story to you regarding September 12th was she pulled a gun on someone. Is that correct?
She did.
Okay. As far as when you spoke to Callie, did he corroborate that she pulled a gun on Antoine on September 12th?
He did.
Okay. Did Anton also corroborate that she pulled a gun on him on September 12th?
Yes.
Okay. And so as far as her story about how the gun ended up in the closet that day, first thing that she told you was that Callie put it in the closet, correct?
I believe so.
Did she tell you that other people put the gun in the closet as well?
I just recall Callie.
Okay, so she says Callie put the gun in the closet. Okay. Do you remember what her stories were regarding putting the gun in the bush?
She claimed that Callie put the gun in the bush initially.
That was her first story. Her second story was that it was Anton.
Yes.
And then her third and final story was that she put the gun in the bush.
She
Is that
wanted to get the
correct?
gun out of the house.
And so as far as who is handling the gun and doing things with the gun. Is it fair to say that first she blames other people, and then she says that it was her?
She did blame other people.
And then later on she admits that it's her.
She has no accountability.
Okay, you were talking about the black bag.
Yes.
So in her initial statements to you, whenever she gets to the story where it's Gavin now, do you recall that? That was after she had said it was a random black guy, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then she mentioned
Yes.
that there may be something going on with the Mexicans, I think is her words, that were at the park.
The 3
Do you recall
Hispanic
that?
males at the park may have been involved or followed her or something.
She said there were suspicious Mexicans at the
Yes.
park. Those are her words. And then she also said that somebody might have followed her home. Is that correct?
Correct, a black vehicle.
Then her next story is that it is her ex-boyfriend Anton. Is that correct?
Yes, well, the unknown black male, and then we get to
Then you get to Anton. And Anton comes in and he murders his daughter, is her next story. Is that
I
correct?
believe her story was he brought a gun in and shot his daughter.
So when we get to the next story where she's saying it's Gavin, do you recall that?
After we were going to put warrants on Antoine.
Whenever she gets to the story where she's saying it's Gavin, she gives you a litany of facts that happen with that story. Is that correct?
Correct.
And she tells you specifically that he goes and he gets a bar stool. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that he takes that stool and takes it right past her to the closet.
While they're struggling.
Is that correct? While they're
correct.
struggling, and that he climbs up on the top of the bar stool and gets the gun out at the top of the closet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, while you all are at the police station, she makes no mention whatsoever of a black bag.
The first time I remember a black bag is at the scene, and I believe there was one. I didn't see it, but there might have been one moved.
Okay, so the first time she mentions the black bag, do you recall whenever you all were doing the walkthrough, and Phyllis Tonkin's there, DCS is there, and it's on video that we played for the jury?
Yes.
Do you remember Phyllis Tonkin walks out and says something to the effect of, now she's mentioning a black bag?
Was I in the other room talking to Wardlaw? I don't really remember it, but it's recorded.
Okay, and so on that recording, you hear Phyllis Tonkin say, now she's talking about a black bag,
Yes.
right? Okay, and you keep saying there's something that happened with the black bag. Is that correct?
Me? I don't recall.
So let me ask you this. As far as how that black bag got in the top of the closet, is that something that Investigator Wardlaw talked to you about later?
He did.
Okay, and I'm not going to ask you about hearsay. I'm going to ask him those questions. But he relayed information to you about how that black bag got in the top of that closet. Is that correct?
I have no knowledge of the black bag, how it got into the closet.
Okay. Investigator Riddle, do you think it's important to get information from people quickly after an event happens?
Heck yeah, I do.
When there's an officer-involved shooting, is that different sometimes than what we're talking about here?
Yes. These could be self-defenses.
Okay. In this particular case, the first story that you were given was that there was an unknown person out in the community that had just shot a child. Did that cause you concern?
It would cause as a citizen of Knoxville, which I am, it would cause alarm. And then as a police officer, it would cause even more alarm.
Okay. And when she changed her story that it's Anton that did this, is that something that also caused you to be concerned?
Yes, absolutely.
Was it important for you to figure out immediately what was going on at that house with Destiny?
Sure, absolutely.
Explain to the jury why that was significant and why that was important.
Again, we are trying to determine the cause, the motive. Was this a domestic? And we went there just based on the database. We do not want anyone that would harm a five-year-old little girl on the streets. That was what was important to me, what should be important as any human that's walking or citizen of Knoxville.
You talked about that you guys had looked into some information about there being domestics that were happening.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. And just to make sure that I understand, you were saying that there were reports where Anton had abused the defendant. Is that correct?
I believe I pulled 7 to 8 reports.
Okay. Were there also reports, I believe you said, where she was the suspect in things involving Anton as well?
There was a report where Antoine's listed as the victim and she's listed as a suspect. Now, that doesn't mean you're guilty. That's just an actual report.
And so was that something that you took into account when you were talking to the defendant there that day?
I guess my thought process, what I took into account more than anything was Antoine.
Investigator Wardlaw, sometimes do you have to speak to victims right after something tragic has happened either to them or to their family members?
Just to clear the record, I was going to clear it for you.
Did I call you
You called me
Wardlaw?
Wardlaw.
I'm sorry.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Let's get a riddle.
Yes.
Sometimes do you have to speak to victims and family members of victims right after something tragic happens?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Is that something that happens frequently or infrequently?
We talk to family members pretty quickly after events a lot of times.
Is it important sometimes to get people's initial stories when they become a suspect in a case?
Yes.
Why is that?
I mean, we've got to get the facts out there. Not out there, but I've got to get the facts so we can get headed in the right direction from an investigative standpoint. Actual facts, true facts, no fabricated facts.
And so were you frustrated during this interview that you weren't getting actual facts from the defendant in this case?
That calls for speculation. You didn't know any facts.
Did it become clear that she was giving you one
Let
story?
me rule first, gentlemen, before you dive back into your next question. You can ask if he's frustrated. That's a fair question because he's talking about his own emotions, but move along.
Were you frustrated with the stories that she was telling you?
I was frustrated twofold. As a police officer investigating the homicide of a 5-year-old, and I was frustrated from the parent's perspective.
The stories that the defendant was telling you in these cases, they can't all be true. Is that correct?
There was a lot that wasn't true.
And so it was clear to you that she was lying.
Yes.
Investigator Riddle, did you want the truth about what had happened to Destiny?
I would hope for the peace of Knoxville that we would have got the truth on September the 14th, 2019, at 23:14 hours, 11:14 hours at the Knoxville Police Department, besides numerous tales. It would have been so much easier up front to say this was an accident. And then, from my standpoint and the DA's standpoint, we will gather that information. Some people wouldn't, if it's an accident, they wouldn't be charged. I'm not saying we have the charging decision, they do. But if we had that up front, knowing that knowledge, and now we're looking at deceit and lies, you just think there's more to the story.
So was it important for you to get the truth from Ms. Howington?
Absolutely.
That's all.
She didn't know what a casing was, did she?
No.
You had to explain to her.
Yes, sir.
But she'd already been asked about a casing.
Yes, sir.
And you said you had an expert phone extraction person.
Forensic phone examiner, yes.
Days later do that.
Yes, the phone had to be rebuilt.
Was that within 72 hours?
I don't recall. There's an extraction that'll give you the exact date.
Let's clear up this thing about the Mexicans. What she told you was there were 3 young men at the park who were making inappropriate statements about her
And there may be
arrest.
something to that.
And that she went over and found the parents and talked to them and said, you need to teach your boys better. They're talking like that in front of my children.
And she said there might be something to that. I'm not saying that that's her words. That's what she said in the interview.
And you say you got to get the info quick.
Yes, in my opinion.
Right. Or within 48 or 72 hours.
I think it's imperative that we get as much factual information immediately as quick as we can.
And Ms. McDermott, just ask you, officer-involved shootings, those are different.
Yes, sir.
It's a person, right?
Pardon?
It's a person. A police officer is a person.
You're dealing with different circumstances here, Mr. Wayland.
It's a person.
You're dealing with certain circumstances.
It's a person.
It's a person,
Firing a weapon.
and it's considered a homicide.
Right.
Yep.
So the difference between a citizen who might have been involved in a homicide and a police officer who might have been involved in a homicide is what?
I don't know. That's a fair question.
So when she asked you and you said yes, it's different.
Yeah.
You were just answering so you wouldn't have to argue.
Can you rephrase that? I'm not.
She asked you the question. With a police officer involved shooting, it's different, isn't it? You said yes, and I say how, and you say I don't know.
The policy is, or has been, off and on, that you give someone 48 to 72 hours to recollect their thoughts.
That's the difference. Cops get time, citizens don't. Figure it out to coalesce what's happening in their heads. Right?
I will disagree with you, sir.
You won't?
I just disagree with you.
Okay, well, that's all I'm trying to get to. You say it's a shooting, it could be a homicide, and the policy is officers get 48 to 72 hours, citizens get nothing.
If that's policy, I would ask you to show me that in 6 points.
You just said it, that has been the policy.
It's off and on.
Okay.
Okay.
So off and on, police officers get 48 or 72 hours to get their thoughts together and recall things, and citizens get whatever time you give them.
Yes, sir.
In this case, 45 minutes from being told their thoughts.
Yes, sir.
No.
All right, you may step down, Detective Riddle. Approach the bench. Raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Have a seat, please. Adjust the microphone so that you can speak directly into it.
I have the screen.
Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is John Burks.
I think that's too many. Thank you. And you said John Burks?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you spell your first and last name for our court reporter?
Yes, John, John, Burks, Burks.
And where are you currently employed?
Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
What do you do with Florida Fish and Wildlife?
I'm a law enforcement lieutenant.
How long have you been in that position?
Since I returned, I've been there about 4.5 years. Total length of time with Fish and Wildlife, about 10 years.
Okay. Was there a time when you were employed by the Knoxville Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
When was that?
That was early 2018 through October of 2019.
And what was your role with the Knoxville Police Department from 2018 to 2019?
I was an evidence technician.
Can you explain to the jury if you have training to do your job as an evidence technician?
Yes, so primary role for an evidence technician is identification and collection of evidence on a crime scene and preservation of that evidence for trial.
Okay.
I attended the National Forensics Academy through one of the UT sub schools out at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It's a 10-week program. It's considered one of the more prestigious forensic technician schools in the country. I was able to
If it would make
complete
a
that.
difference, we will stipulate his qualifications in the crime scene technician.
We'll just be
Everybody
brief.
agrees he's a crime scene technician.
I do want you to tell them a little bit about, we're not going to go into your whole CV, but if you'll just tell them about your education and then finish with what you were saying about the training academy.
I did get my bachelor's degree in genetics. It's molecular biology, and I did go for 10 weeks to the Oak Ridge Training Center for the National Forensic Academy, teaching just, like I said, crime scene, evidence preservation, evidence collection, and processing.
Okay. On September 14th of 2019, were you employed by the Knoxville Police Department as an evidence technician?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury briefly what an evidence technician does?
So, primarily, we're trying to capture evidence. All we're trying to do is capture the evidence as it was found on scene and preserve it throughout any proceedings. When I go on scene, usually that results in photograph evidence. We're trying to take a snapshot of the scene as we found it, so that a juror or that anybody in the future could see it as we saw it that day.
Okay. So how do you get assigned to a specific case?
We work in shifts. For instance, on this day, I was working a shift, and it just happened to be the person on call for that shift. And so the call comes out to the officers.
Mm-hmm.
The officers respond, and once they respond, they make a determination. With this call, because I was listening, I heard it was a shooting, I dispatched myself and went to the scene just to see if there was a victim. There turned out to be a victim, and I was officially dispatched to the call.
Okay. And so when you say determine if there's a victim, you don't mean a victim there present at the scene. You mean a victim as far as somebody that's been shot or hurt or injured in some way. Is that
Yes,
correct? Okay. And so when you went to, did you go to 502 Balsam Drive?
I did.
When you arrived there, what was the state of what was going on at that particular location?
When I arrived on scene, the victim had already been transported, so the ambulance was actually leaving as I arrived on scene. There were multiple patrol cars, and fire rescue was on scene as well. I parked my vehicle, immediately started taking photos.
Okay. And so walk the jury kind of through, in this particular case, what you did as far as photographing.
So anytime as an evidence technician we take photographs, we're going to photograph from the outside in. The last thing we want to do is start photographing in the middle and miss something. So we take as far out as we can. So the first thing I would do is take a photo of the location. Usually that's a street sign, a mailbox, the letters on the front of the house. We're just trying to paint a picture for you as we walk through the scene. So what I did was I started out wide, and then I would focus my photographs into the crime scene.
Is that what you do in every case?
Every case, yes.
Okay. And then the purpose of doing it that, starting wide and then focusing, what is the purpose of doing that?
To make sure we collect as much evidence as we can. In this instance, it's to find the location exactly, and then make sure that we don't leave anything out. We want to collapse in on the incident location, and as we collapse in on that, we want to capture everything we can, because once that day is gone, you can't see it ever again. So we try to collect as much information as we can.
Let me hand you a collection of photographs and ask you to look through those, and do you recognize those? I'm going to probably do those collectively, Your Honor. I've got a couple different groups of photos that I'm going to do.
Yeah, these are photographs that I took that evening.
Okay. And so if we could mark these as exhibit
24 to 11.
what number are we on?
24, Lisa.
Yes, sir.
24.
Exhibit 24. It's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 42 pictures, if we can make these completed next exhibit.
All right, let those be marked and filed collectively as Exhibit 24, consisting of 42 photographs.
All right, so let me hand you Exhibit 24
Yes, ma'am.
and ask, is the picture that you have on top the same picture that's being displayed over here?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we're going to go through these in order. And they're also going to be on the screen so that you can talk through them. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so what I'd like you to do is kind of describe what we have here, and then when you're ready to go to the next picture, tell me to go to the next picture, and we'll go to the next one, okay?
Yes, ma'am. So this is a photograph that I took to establish the location.
We can get the lights.
Got all the lights on, please.
This is a photograph showing a street sign, and you can actually see the residence in the background. This is just where the incident occurred to establish the location. This is the mailbox in front of the home. Again, I was just trying to establish location. You can see the name on the mailbox. Next. This is the front of the residence where the incident occurred. I'm establishing my way into the residence.
And do you have a time frame for when it was that you started taking pictures in this case?
I started taking pictures around 8:10 p.m.
What's this picture?
When you first enter that front door that we saw, this is the den on the left-hand side. You see a side door entrance that is there, and then you see a set of leather couches. And then as we pan to the right, you'll see an entrance into the next room.
So where is the front door in this photograph?
I'm standing just inside the front door. It would be to the left-hand side.
Okay, so if you walk in, you're looking at what you see when you walk in this home?
When you're walking in and you take a look to the left, this is what you would see.
Okay, so walk in, look to the left.
This is what you would see as you start to look to the right. So this is closer to what you would see as you walk in. I always take photos left to right when I enter a room or a location to try to capture 360. So this is the second photo going through.
So the door would be behind
me now.
you when you're taking this
Yes,
photo?
ma'am. And now the door is directly behind me. This is the right-hand side, so that door you see on the right is the front door. As you walk in through that front den area and you enter that other doorway, there's a bathroom off to the left and a small closet there. And this is the entrance to the den or living room area.
Okay, now is this a second living area?
This has entered the house toward the kitchen.
Okay. And again, the front door is directly behind you?
Yes, ma'am. And this is just another establishing shot of that living room with better lighting. As you enter that living room, that closet door is on the left. The master bedroom is off on the right, and this couch is the first couch. This little armchair is the first that you interact with.
Okay, and so in the very top left of this picture, I see that there appears to be a table with 2 bar stools.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that where the table with the 2 bar stools were when you arrived on the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
You haven't touched anything at this point, moved anything at this point. Is that fair?
Correct. And so when you're looking, you walk in, you hit that main living area. This is all the way to the right. The master bedroom is the one on the right, and I believe this is the children's bedroom on the left, but I'm not sure. This is that far wall. That table with the stools is right in front of me. I'm now photographing left to right on the opposite side of the living room. So this is just another establishing shot. You can see that master bedroom on the right and the entrance. Master bedroom on the left and the entranceway on the right with the front door. And this is that far wall.
What was the lighting like while you were taking these pictures?
The lighting in the home was very dim. The reason we have so much light is because of the flash I used and the light settings that I put on the camera.
Okay. But whenever you were looking without the flash on your camera, was it much darker in that house?
Yes, ma'am, quite a bit. And so this is, as you're over by the TV, there is a bedroom door right there next towards the kitchen. And this was just a shot into that bedroom. This is the living room floor. This is the couch where the victim was found. This is a reddish brown stain that it was essentially under the victim when she was found.
Okay. Now, there are, it looks like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pillows that are on this couch. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, later on in the course of your investigation, do you end up finding something of significance in any of these pillows?
That's correct.
Which one do you find something in?
The third from the left.
Okay.
So on the left side, you have 2 with frills, and then you have 1 without frill. That first one without frill from the left is the pillow.
Okay, and so we're not talking about the one that's laying down. We're talking about the one that's propped up. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's the one where you end up finding what?
We end up finding a projectile.
Okay. And this is how the couch was when you walked into that home. Is that correct?
Correct. So this is that same couch. It's as I was photographing the scene, I noticed the remote control with the back missing. I just take a photo of everything. I happened to take a photo of that because it looked odd.
Okay, so we're talking about between the two couch.
It's like a couch and an ottoman.
Okay, so there's a couch back here and then an ottoman in the front.
Yes.
And then there is 2 black items that I can see in this picture, and you're saying one's a remote, and what's the other piece?
The one on the right is the remote control. The one on the left is the back battery cover. This is a close-up shot of the reddish-brown stain with a small piece of plastic. I believe it was a small piece of plastic from the remote. It ended up being next to the stain. That's another shot of that with better lighting.
And can you use that arrow to, where is this small piece of plastic that you're referencing? Is it over here?
I'm sorry, down to the left, left more. Left more. Keep going. A little more left. That piece right there is a small piece of black plastic.
What is this?
So this is a shot facing the front door from the viewpoint of the couch where the reddish brown stain was, trying to establish a line of sight to the front door. This is another image of that with the foreground in focus. And this is a shot from the very left edge of the front door looking towards the couch.
Okay, so you've now walked into the second living room, or the first living room when you come in the door.
That's correct. You can see on the left side the door frame to the main entrance.
So are you standing in the actual front door when you're taking this picture?
Correct. And this is another shot heading back towards the scene where the victim was found. If this is not the same photo, this is just another shot trying to get the lighting right. There were 2 cigarillos found in the home. I took photos of both just because they may have been collected for DNA evidence.
Okay, and so where are we in the house?
This is in the kitchen of the home. It's when you're looking at the living room, it's just behind the living room. A close-up of the same cigarillo. This is a heater in the home. This heater had another cigarillo on it.
Right here?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a close-up.
This is just a close-up shot. Yes, ma'am. When I was on scene, before Investigator Riddle left with Ms. Howington, he asked me to get a distance from the reddish-brown stain to the front door frame. So we took a measuring implement and walked it out. This was me holding the beginning of the tape at the reddish-brown stain. This is the entire length of the measuring device out to the front door, and this is the length going out. I had another crime scene technician who was a trainee of mine holding the tape at the front door. I walked forward and got the measurement at the front door.
Do you recall what that was?
It was 29 feet, I believe. Yes, ma'am.
What's this next picture?
I think this is the previous picture, but this is me holding that, or marking the beginning of the measuring tape. And this is another shot marking where I believe I was trying to mark where that pink laptop was found, 1.5 feet away from the reddish brown stain. This is the measuring tape going out through the living room to the door frame. This is the measuring tape being held in the same spot at the door frame. And this is the actual measurement in inches of the door frame itself.
What is that in feet?
I'm not sure in feet. So 29 feet. That was if you flip back one, that's the measurement in millimeters. That's the centimeters. Sorry. This is the measurement in feet.
Okay, so it's a little bit more than 29 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
What is this picture of?
This is a picture of that front den. Investigator Riddle, we did notice just a couple items of like food, and there was a lighter and some cigarillos. We just want to establish where those were found within the home. So this is that front den. And this is a close-up shot of where it looked like people had inhabited this room. This was a card found on the left-hand side of that couch with Gavin Howington's name on it for, I think, a dental appointment. These are what appeared to be like a Cinnamon Toast cereal pieces on the couch next to the Black and Mild and a lighter, or Black and Mild pack and a lighter. So this was taken a little later in the evening, but this was when we started to closely. Yes, ma'am.
So these pictures, starting with the couch with the cigarillo, what time did you begin taking those pictures?
When I entered the home, probably around 8:15, I photographed my way through the home. This was after I talked to the investigator, so this started around 9:10 p.m.
Okay. And so, and there are 1, 2, 3 pictures here, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think we make this the next exhibit.
25 collectively.
How many photographs?
I think 3.
So I believe you said that you started at what time?
When I began photographing, it was approximately 8:10 p.m.
Okay, and then by the time you get to the couch and the remote that we're getting ready to look at, that's what time?
9:10 p.m.
And tell the jury about the photo that we have displayed.
This photograph is of the remote control as found. You can see the back black cover, and you can also see reddish brown stains on the remote itself with a defect in the remote.
Is that what this is right here that I'm putting out in the middle?
That's correct.
Okay, and this over here, is that the back part of the remote?
Yes, ma'am.
And this next picture?
This is just a side-blown photograph of the same defect on the back of the remote control.
Okay, did there come a point in time while you were there having photographed the scene when you received information from officers about a gun that had been located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me show you these sets of pictures and ask you, are these the pictures that you took after the gun was found?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was it that you began taking those sets of pictures?
Approximately 10:05 p.m.
Was that immediately after the gun was found?
Yes, ma'am. As soon as we were told about it, we stopped everything, went outside to photograph.
And so you started photographing at 10:06 p.m., is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We could collectively make this the next exhibit. It's
How many photos?
11.
Any objection?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what you're talking about. See, come through these.
Are they photographs of the firearm?
Yes, it's going to be the outside of the home and the firearm.
All right, let that be marked and filed collectively as number 26.
Okay, so at 10:06 you start taking these photos, and can you describe for the jury what it is that you took photos of and why?
We were told that the firearm was found on the outside of the home, on the right side. I had made an establishing shot of that front porch in the window to determine the location of the house where I'm at. The next photograph would be a sweeping photograph of the right side of the home to determine.
And when you say the right side, are you talking about if you're looking at the home?
That's correct. If you're looking at the home from the front, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it would be the right side from looking at
Yes,
the
ma'am.
house. Okay. So what is this one? This is around the corner?
Yes, ma'am. The right side of the house, around the corner. This is further along the right side of the home. It was tough with the lighting, but you can see a bush on the right side there. This bush was on that right side of the home, about a little more than midway down the home.
Okay. Now, when you walked around that corner before you used your camera to flash, could you see very well back there?
Oh, no, ma'am. It was very dark.
What's this a picture of?
So this is a picture with a better flash of the firearm under the bush as it was found.
This picture?
Yes, ma'am. This picture is a closer image of the photograph, or of the firearm itself under the bush.
Okay. This?
Another closer establishing shot of the firearm.
This?
So this is a photo of the firearm after I picked it up and moved it to an evidence box.
Okay. This?
This is a photograph of the firearm with the model and serial number in view.
This?
Every time we handle a firearm, we have to make it safe before we place it in the box and close the box up. So this is, if you look on the right, you can see the magazine has been removed from the firearm. I have pulled the slide back to eject the live round. Usually on a semi-automatic, you'd have a live round in the chamber ready to be fired. In this instance, there was a unejected spent cartridge still in the chamber.
Is that what this is right here?
Yes, ma'am. You can see there's no projectile in that casing anymore. So I wanted to show that that casing was in the gun when I found it.
Okay, now up until this point, whenever you looked into this firearm, had you all been looking for a casing in the home?
Yes, we had. We had spent quite a time looking for a casing and a projectile.
Okay, and so at this point, you found the casing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you found the projectile yet?
No, ma'am, not at all.
Did you spend any amount of time looking at that particular couch for the projectile?
Yes, we did.
Okay, but you hadn't found it at this point yet,
No,
is that
ma'am.
correct? All right, so this last couple photos?
This is a similar photo, just showing from the top how the cartridge or the casing was found in the chamber of the weapon. This is a image of the back of the cartridge to show that the casing was spent and the primer was engaged.
Okay, can you explain to the jury what that means? The casing was spent and the primer was engaged. What does that mean?
So this casing, this means that this is just a casing. This is not a full bullet. The projectile and powder are spent, and this small round section on the back of the casing that's encased in a darker bronze color, there is a defect, an impact defect in that primer, which just shows that that casing was fired.
Is that what this strike point is right here?
Yes, ma'am.
And what causes that?
When a weapon is fired, especially when a weapon is fired, a firing pin hits that primer, which ignites the powder inside of the ammunition, which fires the bullet.
Is that the last photo you have in that group of photos up there?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that you also collected the gun, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have gloves?
This may be a good time to break. Is that all the photographs?
That's all the photographs for a couple minutes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is, that clock's a little bit fast, but it's 12:30 or a few minutes past that. The food, I believe, is getting set up as we speak, so we're going to break for lunch. Remember the court's previous admonitions: don't discuss the case with one another, nor with any other person, nor attempt to learn anything at all about the case. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you in here a little over an hour and get back to work. I'll rise for the jury.